You have been told to stay still because this silence is not emptiness, it is protection. And the first thing that changes is not your circumstance, but your inner noise. You have tried to answer too quickly, to explain too much, to defend what was already being watched over, and now the air around you feels different, like a room after a storm when the window is still open and the rain has finally moved on. The message has not failed because it is late, and you have not been forgotten because the answer has not spoken yet. What has been happening is quieter than panic and stronger than pressure. There is a place in you that keeps reaching for words, and there is another place that knows the words would only scatter what God is gathering. So you are being invited into a holy stillness, not the stillness of surrendering your voice forever, but the stillness of refusing to rush what heaven is already arranging, in the kitchen, in the car, in the hallway before sleep, in the long minutes when your phone stays dark. You have felt that tension between speaking and waiting, and your chest tightened because silence can feel like abandonment before it reveals itself as preparation. Yet the old habit of filling every gap is being exposed now, because not every open space is an absence, and not every delay is a denial. You may have thought your peace would come after the explanation, but often peace comes first, and explanation follows like daylight after dawn. The silence around you is not a wall, it is a covering, and what is covered is not lost. You do not need to force a door that has already been marked for opening. You do not need to produce the timing that belongs to God. The quiet you are hearing is shaping you into someone who can recognize the right answer when it arrives. And even now, while the room remains still, something in you is beginning to understand that being held back can be a form of being held safe. There is a kind of silence that embarrasses the flesh and steadies the spirit, and you have been walking inside it longer than you realized. It feels like sitting on the edge of the bed with your hands open and no message to send, no argument to win, no proof left to gather, only breath. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. And waiting and the sound of your own thoughts settling down. The old reflex tells you to chase what is unresolved, but your body is learning a different language now. One where your shoulders drop before your circumstances move. You notice it in the pause before you pick up the phone, in the way your jaw unclenches when you stop rehearsing a response, in the strange relief that comes when you admit you cannot carry this by sheer effort. What has been silent is not dead, and what has not yet answered is not blind. This is where discernment becomes clearer than noise. A room can be full of voices and still leave you empty, while one true silence can reveal more than 1,000 rushed explanations. That is why this moment feels costly, because the old identity wants to speak first, defend first, prove first, while the new work of God asks you to wait long enough to hear what is being returned to you. You were not sent into silence to disappear. You were sent there so the false echoes would leave your chest. The pressure to perform has been too loud for too long, and now the quiet is cutting through it like clear water through mud. There is something gentle but exact about this season, and it does not flatter your impatience. It confronts it with mercy. It says that your next step will not be born from panic, and your answer will not be born from fear. Stay with the stillness long enough, and you will notice that it is already speaking in a deeper voice than the noise ever did. You may have been watching other people move while your own life seemed paused, and that is exactly where the silence has been doing its hidden work. On the outside, nothing dramatic happened, but inside, old urgencies started losing their grip, one by one, like hands unclasping after a long strain. You looked at the sink, the chair, the unread message, the clock on the wall, and you wondered why so much seemed unchanged while your spirit felt rearranged. This is how protection often arrives, not with applause, but with interruption. You were about to answer too soon, choose too quickly, trust the wrong voice because it sounded familiar, and the silence stepped in to slow your hand before your heart could be pulled off center. There is no shame in that because the pace you were carrying was never meant to be permanent. It was a survival rhythm, not a calling rhythm. Now the quiet is revealing the difference between a reaction and a response, and your whole body has begun to notice the difference. The breath that used to stay shallow is getting deeper, and with it comes the uneasy recognition that you have been trying to live as if every delay were a threat. But some delays are doors disguised as pauses, and some pauses are mercy disguised as restraint. You are being taught to wait without shrinking, to listen without collapsing, to remain open without becoming vulnerable to every passing voice. The answer from above will not arrive in confusion, and it will not need the noise that once surrounded you. What God is preparing will not ask you to betray your peace in order to receive it. It will fit the stillness that formed you. The silence has been standing between you and your old ways, and at first it looked like loss. Then it began to feel like a clearing, as though a room in your life had been opened and swept, and all the clutter you once called necessary was suddenly exposed by the light. You were carrying too many interpretations at once, too many assumptions, too many imagined endings, and the quiet started separating truth from fear. That separation can feel sharp, because not everything loud is false, and not everything quiet is safe, but this silence has a different texture. It does not push you away from God. It draws you nearer to the place where you can hear without distortion. You may have noticed how old memories rise when things go still, as if your mind tries to refill the gap with the past, with unfinished conversations, with people who could not give what you needed. Yet the silence is not asking you to relive what broke you. It is asking you to let what broke you lose its authority. In that sense, the quiet is a correction, not a punishment. It is showing you that not every unfinished matter belongs to your hands. Some things are being moved by a wisdom that does not need your panic to function. The answer from above is already closer than the old fear wants to admit, and what is being returned may arrive only after you stop trying to force it into your own timing. That is why the silence matters, because it keeps your spirit from misnaming the waiting. It is not empty space. It is occupied space, full of intention you cannot yet fully see. And when intention is hidden, trust becomes the only way to stand. There are hours when silence feels like standing at a closed gate, and you keep thinking the gate is the problem, when the gate is actually the boundary that saved you from walking too early into what was not ready for you. You can feel it in your hands when they want to text, explain, ask again, and then stop halfway because something deeper says, wait. The waiting does not always feel graceful, but it is teaching your nervous system that not every unanswered thing is unsafe. That lesson is changing the shape of your inner life. Where there used to be frantic motion, there is now a narrow path of patience, and that path may be small, but it is holy. You were trained by urgency for so long that peace almost feels suspicious, yet peace is often the first sign that alignment has begun. The silence has exposed what urgency hid, the places where you were about to give away your clarity just to end discomfort. Now your spirit is learning to sit still without calling it defeat. You are learning that restraint can be wisdom, and that a delayed response can protect a future you cannot yet picture. The old pattern said, answer now, worry later. The new pattern says, listen now, move only when peace agrees. That shift changes everything because your life is not being ruled by the loudest clock anymore. It is being ordered by the one who sees beyond the clock. And in the middle of all this stillness, there is a dignity growing inside you, the kind that does not need to announce itself because it has finally been anchored. What is being asked of you is simpler than the noise suggests and harder than pride wants to admit. You are being asked to remain present without forcing the moment to perform. You are being asked to let silence do the work that words cannot do right now. In the same way a field rests before harvest, there is a hidden labor happening beneath the surface of your visible stillness. You cannot rush roots, and you cannot command timing into maturity. The quiet is not wasting you, it is deepening you. Every time you choose not to react, something in you becomes less governed by the old ache to control outcomes. Every time you refuse to fill the space with anxious speech, your heart makes room for a cleaner hearing. That is why the silence has felt both uncomfortable and strangely dignifying. It is stripping away the performance that made your life feel louder than it was honest. There is a truth beneath the truth, and you are being led toward it by subtraction. The less you grasp, the more you can recognize. The less you force, the more you can receive. The answer from above will not come to the version of you that is still arguing with the pause. It will come to the version of you that has learned how to sit in the waiting without calling it a waste. And that version of you is already forming, even now, in this very quiet. You may have noticed how silence reveals which voices were truly shaping you. When everything goes still, the flattering words, the urgent opinions, the comparison, and the fear all lose some of their power, and what remains is the simple question of what is true. That is a tender question because truth is not always loud, and it does not always arrive with the certainty your mind demands. It arrives in the body first, in the easing of the breath, in the softening of the shoulders, in the strange recognition that you can finally stop fighting what you cannot yet explain. The silence around you is not asking you to become passive. It is asking you to become receptive. There is a difference, and your spirit knows it. Passive waiting gives up. Receptive waiting stays awake. You have been in a season where God is separating those two things in you, and the separation can feel like loneliness until it becomes clarity. What looked like delay may be the mercy that kept you from answering the wrong call. What looked like absence may be the space where the right answer can finally land without interference. The silence is not hiding your future from you. It is protecting your future from the noise that would distort it. This is why you feel a quiet pressure in the chest when you are tempted to rush, because something holy in you resists being dragged back into confusion. The answer from above will not need to compete. It will stand with authority, and your spirit will know it because the silence has taught you how to recognize the real thing. So remain there a little longer, because the real answer is closer than panic believes. There is a point where silence stops feeling like a pause and starts feeling like a witness. It watches what you do with impatience, with longing, with the urge to run ahead of what is unfolding. In that witness, your habits are exposed without condemnation, and that is part of the mercy. You see how quickly you move when you feel unseen, how quickly you explain yourself when you fear being misunderstood, how quickly you reach for certainty when you're asked to trust. The silence stands there, not accusing but clarifying. It is showing you the exact places where your soul has been overworking to compensate for a lack of peace. That kind of honesty can sting for a moment because it removes the comforting illusion that you were merely busy. You were often trying to control the pain of not knowing. And now, in this quieter season, the need to control is being met with a deeper invitation. Let God be the one who names the next step. In practical terms, this may look like one less message sent, one less conversation forced, one less attempt to manage everyone's perception of you. In spiritual terms, it means your answer is being moved out of your own hands and into a place where it can be given cleanly. The silence is not a closed door forever. It is a protected threshold. You are not being abandoned there. You are being prepared to cross it with discernment. And when you finally hear what comes from above, you will recognize why the quiet had to come first. If any of this has landed in you, if your chest has softened even a little while reading these words, type 888 in the comments. That is not a magic number. It is a quiet sign of overflow, a simple agreement that the silence has been doing more than you could see. Write it as a small act of recognition, because sometimes the smallest agreement is the one that tells heaven you are listening. Then come back to me, because the next part of this stillness is where the hidden answer begins to gather shape. You are not typing it to impress anyone, but to mark the moment when your spirit stopped resisting the pause. That matters, because what is acknowledged becomes easier to carry. And what is carried with peace is no longer burden, it is preparation. So type 888 and then return. The quiet is not ending, but it is becoming more precise. The answer from above is not vague, and neither is this invitation. Let the simple act of writing it be your way of saying you are willing to remain open while heaven finishes what it started. What comes next belongs to the same sacred stillness, only now you will be watching it with clearer eyes. The silence has a way of finding the places where you were still pretending to be fine, and that discovery can be both tender and unsettling. In a chair by the window, with light on the floor and dust moving slowly through it, you may suddenly realize how long you have been carrying a response that was never truly yours. It was borrowed from expectation, shaped by fear, polished by habit, and the quiet is now revealing its weight. Your body knows the difference before your mind admits it. The stomach loosens, the throat eases, the forehead stops holding itself so tight, and you understand that not all relief is visible from the outside. There is a deep internal relief that comes when you stop rehearsing how to explain yourself to people who were never called to write your story. That kind of relief is the beginning of freedom. It does not announce itself loudly. It arrives like a hand on the back in a crowded room, steady and unobtrusive. The silence is teaching you that you do not have to answer every tension with noise. Some tensions are dissolved by waiting long enough for the right word to find you, and the word that comes from above will not bruise what it is meant to bless. It will not demand that you become smaller to fit it. It will meet you in the stillness where you finally stopped trying to produce the outcome and began allowing the outcome to be revealed. That is where the answer lives now, in the place where your need for control has less room and your trust has more. There is a difference between silence that hides and silence that guards, and the one around you is guarding something. You can sense it in the way certain doors have not opened yet, in the way certain conversations never quite happened, in the way a clear yes has not arrived where you expected one. It is tempting to label that as rejection, but the quiet keeps refusing that label. Instead, it keeps pointing toward timing, protection, and the slow arrangement of what could not be rushed. That is not always comfortable, because you want the clarity now, and the silence keeps asking you to trust the process before the picture is complete. Yet the process is where your heart is being refined. The rough edges of impatience are being smoothed, not by argument, but by absence. You are learning to stay rooted when nothing seems to happen, which is a deeper strength than being able to move fast when everything is obvious. The answer from above often comes to those who can remain faithful in the interval between asking and receiving. That interval is sacred. It is where motives are tested, where fear is exposed, and where a new steadiness takes shape. In that steadiness, you become less likely to misread the next instruction. You become more capable of carrying it without twisting it into your own agenda. The silence is not punishing you, it is preparing your hearing, so that when the answer arrives, it will not pass by unnoticed. And what is truly from God will never need the noise of panic to prove itself. The quiet has been standing between you and the old habit of making immediate conclusions, and that habit has not been easy to release. You wanted quick meaning because quick meaning feels like control, but the silence is teaching you that rushed conclusions often cost more than they save. A room can feel empty before it is filled with the right presence, and your life can feel stalled before it is settled into the right order. That is why the waiting has been so physical, because your spirit is not only thinking about this season, it is living through it in the body. The tired eyes, the restless hands, the pauses in conversation, the moment you stare at one place for too long and realize you are no longer forcing an answer, all of that is part of the same hidden work. Something in you has begun to suspect that the pause is not the problem. The problem was the old fear that every pause meant loss. It did not. Some pauses are the place where false pressure falls away. Some silences are the field where true direction grows. You may not yet have the full explanation, but you are no longer the same person who entered the waiting. The answer from above is forming around a version of you that can hold it, that matters more than speed. It means the quiet has purpose, and purpose does not always feel efficient while it is happening. But it is still purpose. And purpose always moves, even when it does so invisibly. There are moments when silence feels like standing in a doorway with one hand on the frame and the other hand empty. Not because nothing is coming, but because you are being taught not to grab before you are given. That posture is unfamiliar to a lot of people because we are trained to believe that reaching is the same as receiving. Yet you are learning a different rhythm. You are learning to receive without strain. You are learning that what is meant for you does not require you to betray your peace in order to hold on to it. The room around you may still look ordinary, the lamp still on, the table still cluttered, the same shoes still by the door, but inside you there has been a rearrangement that cannot be undone by noise. This is where trust becomes embodied rather than theoretical. It lives in the way you exhale before speaking, in the way you let a question sit unanswered for a moment, in the way you stop translating silence into danger. That change is already changing you. It is making space for discernment, and discernment is one of the quietest forms of strength. The answer from above will meet that strength, not the old panic. And because you have remained, even imperfectly, the silence has been doing its deepest work. It has been teaching your heart how to stand without collapsing under uncertainty. That is not a small thing. It is the kind of formation that holds a future with dignity. The silence around you has also been revealing which burdens were never yours to keep. Some of what you called responsibility was actually fear, dressed as duty, and the quiet has now stripped off the disguise. You can feel the difference when you are alone with your thoughts at night, when there is no one to impress, no conversation to manage, no immediate problem to solve, only the honest weight of what you have been carrying. In that honesty, the body sometimes trembles a little, not from weakness, but from release. Release can feel like vulnerability before it feels like relief. Yet that vulnerability is where healing begins to look like wisdom. You are not being told to abandon concern. You are being invited to stop confusing concern with control. Those are not the same thing. The silence makes that distinction clear by giving you no place to hide from it. It becomes impossible to pretend that every fear is a fact. It becomes harder to believe that every delay is a disaster. What remains is a more measured, more grounded way of being. And as that groundedness grows, so does the likelihood that the answer from above will be received without distortion. This is why the quiet feels so serious. It is preparing you for a clean reception. It is making room where clutter once crowded the threshold. It is teaching you to wait without rehearsing disaster. That lesson is not easy, but it is kind. And kindness is often what holiness feels like when it first enters a wounded life. There is a sacred frustration in being told to wait when every part of you wants motion, and you have felt that frustration in your bones. It can show up as pacing in the room, as rereading the same message, as staring out the window while your mind keeps insisting that something should have happened by now. But the silence is not in agreement with panic. It is in agreement with formation. Formation takes time because it reaches places panic never touches. It reaches the hidden reflex, the old wound, the automatic interpretation that says you are behind or forgotten or overlooked. Those interpretations are loud, but they are not final. The silence is proving that finality belongs to a higher voice, not to the voice of urgency. That higher voice does not rush to condemn you for needing reassurance. It simply keeps leading you towards steadiness. When your breath becomes steadier, your choices become cleaner. When your choices become cleaner, your next steps stop bleeding energy into what was never meant to sustain you. So the stillness is not wasted time. It is the place where wasted energy is being reclaimed. The answer from above will come with the clarity that only patience can host. It will not arrive as confusion wearing religious language. It will arrive as a peace that knows your name. And when it comes, you will understand why you had to remain in silence long enough to hear it properly. There are signs that a season is changing long before the change becomes visible, and one of those signs is the deepening of your tolerance for holy quiet. What once felt unbearable now feels less like emptiness and more like a protected chamber where your heart can recover its balance. You may still wish for the answer, and that desire is not wrong, but it no longer owns you the same way. That is because the silence has already started loosening the grip of dependence on immediate results. In practical terms, this might look like you setting the phone down without agitation, or finishing a task without the need to check for another message, or sitting in the car for a moment before starting the engine because you no longer need to outrun your thoughts. These are small things, but they reveal a larger shift. The spirit that once ran at the pace of urgency is being trained into a steadier walk. That steady walk can carry more truth than a hurried sprint. It can notice the answer when it arrives. It can distinguish between what was merely loud and what is truly directed. The silence then is not just about withholding words. It is about returning your hearing to you. And when your hearing is returned, your future becomes less vulnerable to confusion. You are being prepared for a response from above that will not require frantic interpretation. It will be clear enough for the quieted heart to recognize. And that recognition is part of the blessing. You have probably learned by now that silence can either harden a person or soften them. And in your case, it is revealing both the resistance and the mercy within the process. The resistance appears when you want to force a timeline, and the mercy appears when you realize that a delayed answer may have protected you from a choice that would have cost more than you knew. That contrast has been painful and healing at the same time. It has exposed the impatience that kept trying to rename waiting as failure, and it has gently corrected that lie. The quiet is not romantic, and it is not always comfortable, but it is honest. It tells you that spiritual maturity often begins where performance ends. When you stop performing certainty, space opens for real discernment. And discernment, unlike anxiety, does not need to talk all the time. It listens, it notices, it waits until the inner witness agrees. That is what is happening in you now. The silence is teaching your inner witness to stand upright. It is teaching you to pause before the old reaction takes the wheel. It is teaching you that your answer from above will not need to be forced into shape by your fear. It will arrive in a shape that fits the quiet that formed it. So keep listening, keep breathing, keep letting the noise fall away. The stillness is not empty, and you are not empty inside it. The room you are in may still look the same, but the way you inhabit it is changing, and that change matters more than it appears. You know attention. You need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.